Hey runners, in this video we're going to break down how to run with proper technique. If you're training for a 5K, a half marathon, a marathon, or a triathlon, running with proper technique is really important for your best performance as well as staying healthy. Before we get started though, I do have a confession to make. I have always struggled with running form. Some runners look like a gazelle and it just seems like their running form is perfect and dialed in, but it's always been a struggle for me and I feel like my running has always looked awkward. When I competed in my first Ironman, this actually led to significant issues including IT band syndrome, and it led me to have to limp through the end of the run. I felt like I would never be able to run pain-free or have a good smooth running form. But over the last 4 years since then, I've worked with a running coach, gotten my doctorate of physical therapy, and learned a ton about gait analysis to the point that now I've been able to improve my running form and help others improve their running form. This has led me to be able to run an Ironman completely pain-free and even podium more local races. So in this video, I wanna share with you guys all of the running tips that I've learned and help you dial in your running form. Specifically, we're gonna share 5 tips with you and 5 exercises so that with each running form cue, you can know exactly what exercise is going to help you make that improvement to your form. We're gonna go ahead and get started with point number 1, which not a lot of people think about, and that is your arm swing. Knowing about your arm swing tells me a lot about what your lower body is doing as well, because your right arm is connected to your left leg. So depending on how your right arm is swinging, you might be overstriding or neutral or understriding with the opposite leg. So what we want to see when it comes to arm swing is that we're not crossing over midline. Crossing over midline with our arm swing is a good indication that we're not going to be performing optimally with our lower body as well. The other thing we want to look for with arm swing is how far forward your elbow is moving. Ideally, we want to see the elbow move from the rib cage and then back. If the elbow is going far in front of the rib cage, that's usually an indication that we're overstriding on the opposite side. So a lot of times with runners, especially with one-sided issues, you'll see arm swing that goes farther forward on one side than the other. A good cue to think about while you're running is to hold your fingers lightly together like you're holding potato chips, and then to focus on moving your elbows back rather than driving your arms forward. This will help your arm swing feel better, your shoulders feel better, and it'll also help with how you're contacting the ground with your feet. I find that a lot of runners who struggle with arm swing and overstriding also have core weakness. And we can test this by reaching the opposite elbow to knee and then trying to pull that apart. If one side is really weak here, that's a good indication that we need to work on our core strength. The exercise that I would recommend to improve this is a plank with a leg lift. So here we're gonna be working on our anterior core, or the abs on the front side of our body. They're gonna help us maintain good running posture. This is going to be done by holding that plank position and alternating lifting the legs left and right. You want to work about 30 seconds here, 3 times. Technique point number 2 involves running with a slight forward lean. The first time I heard this cue, I thought, that seems impossible, and whenever I tried it, it just felt so awkward, like I was falling over. But over time, I was able to get this a little bit more efficient and make it feel better. The cues that I like for this one are to keep your head tall, but to lean forward slightly. Make sure whenever you're leaning forward that we're not just leaning forward at the hips, but we keep a good, strong, tall line between our head, our hips, and our ankles. We don't want to be hinging at the front, or else it's just going to feel awkward and we might still be overstriding. So for a good forward lean, our checkpoints here, our head, our hips, and our ankles are in a straight line. Our elbows are coming back behind the body, and we're contacting the ground each step with our foot beneath our hip. One exercise that can help you with this is a band back extension. We're going to be standing tall for this one. We're going to be having our palms open and forward, and then we're going to be working our hands back behind the body, retracting our shoulder blades. This is going to strengthen all the muscles on the back side to help you maintain this good, strong, tall running posture. For this one, I would recommend a 1-minute hold, alternating 10 seconds on each leg, back and forth, and doing that 2 times. All right, and technique point number 3 that you want to master is getting the right cadence. This one has a really significant effect, and I've worked with a number of runners who have had a significant improvement in their symptoms from getting this point right. Cadence is your step rate. This is how many steps you're taking per minute. So the way you're going to measure this is by going onto a treadmill, counting for 60 seconds how many times your foot contacts the ground. The typical cadence for a recreational runner is around 150 steps per minute. By increasing that by just 5 or 10% to around 160 or 165 steps per minute, you can significantly decrease the load through your knee. Just a 5% increase in cadence decreases the load through the knee by 20%. Here's exactly how I would increase your cadence. First, you want to find out what your cadence was. So say it was 150 steps per minute. In that case, I would go to Spotify and search 160 beats per minute playlist. You can use music that's 160 beats per minute. You can use a metronome that's 160 beats per minute, but you want to run listening to that and then contacting your foot with each beat. You'll notice with this faster step rate that your knees are going to feel better and you're going to be running more efficiently. And then one exercise that can help with this as well is a weighted march. So by doing this, we're going to be strengthening the mid stance position. We're going to have dumbbells or kettlebells in each hand. Ideally, we want that total weight between the two hands to be about half your body weight, and then you want to just slowly march forward. This is going to help improve your posture and the way your foot contacts the ground, and it will help feed forward with that better cadence. Point number 4 to help you improve your running has to do with footwear and the way that we're contacting the ground. These go hand in hand, and it's important to know that there's not one best shoe for everybody. The best shoe for you is probably the one that you're most comfortable in. The two main options are something that's more flat and zero drop, like this Ultra shoe, and something that has a more thick heel cushion, like this Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. Depending on the type of runner you are, you might choose one or the other, or if you're like me, you might have a pair of each and cycle through using both. When it comes to analyzing your running form, we're gonna look at 2 different points. One is where you're contacting the ground relative to your hip. So are you contacting the ground directly underneath your hip, or are you contacting the ground far in front of your hip? This is typically associated with point number 2, which is what angle your shoe is at whenever you're contacting the ground. Are you contacting the ground with a high shank angle where your shoe is up like this, or are you contacting the ground where your shoe is more flat? What I recommend for most runners working on good running form is moving that contact point farther underneath their hip and underneath their center of mass. So if you're contacting the ground far out in front of you with the toe up really high, then we want to draw that back and closer to underneath the hip. As long as you're contacting the ground underneath your hip, it actually doesn't matter if we're contacting with the heel or if we're contacting with the midfoot or the ball of the foot. Any one of those 3 can be a viable option so long as we're contacting the ground underneath the hip. One exercise that I recommend for this is building up calf strength. When we're running, we have 2 to 8 times body weight going through the calf muscles with each step. It's really important that we strengthen that calf muscle group with heavy calf raises. I recommend for most people that we go heavy here and do 4 sets of just 8 repetitions. If you can do 10 or 15 or 20 repetitions, then you need to make the exercise more challenging. We can do that by going on to one leg and even by holding a dumbbell if we want to make this really challenging. Technique point number 5 that's going to improve your running form is building elasticity. If we can improve the elasticity of the muscle and tendon structures through the lower leg and foot, we're going to feel more bouncy off the ground and springy and fresh when we run. There are a lot of structures through the lower leg, including your calf muscle, your Achilles tendon, and also all of the bones and plantar fascia around the foot that can be improved by doing plyometric exercises. The exercise that I recommend runners do for this is a pogo hop. A pogo hop is whenever you're bouncing on the ball of your foot and hopping up and down. These we do with arm swing, working vertically up and down and contacting the ground quickly. This is going to stress the calf muscle, the Achilles tendon, the plantar fascia, and it's going to improve the way that you can contact the ground and be efficient with your gait cycle. We recommend doing these pogo hops for 3 sets of 30 seconds. All right, now let's put it all together into one routine. I would recommend doing this routine 3 times a week to support your improvements in your posture and your running mechanics. Exercise number 1 was that plank leg lift. We're gonna do that for 2 sets of 60 seconds. Exercise number 2 was the band back extension. We're gonna do that for 2 sets of 60 seconds as well. If you don't have a band, you can just lay chest down and do this by lifting your arms up. Exercise number 3 was the weighted march. We're doing that one for 2 sets of 60 seconds. Exercise 4 was our calf raise, which we're doing heavy for 4 sets of 8 repetitions. And then lastly was our pogo hop. We're doing those for 3 sets of 30 seconds. Improving your strength with these exercises in conjunction with using the cues that we gave you will help significantly improve your running form so that you can perform and feel your best during your next race. If you have any running technique tips that helped you, go ahead and leave those in the comments below so we can share with other runners. If you're interested in learning more or following a running program, you can check out my hybrid athlete program in the description below. That's the exact running, strength, and plyometric program that I do. And then lastly, just make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.